It is believed to be the backbone of the economy, talking about the manufacturing sector. But are we doing the right things or putting in place the right policies to support them, to help them grow and support the economy? Well, we're looking at the manufacturing sector in Ghana today and whether the right support and the policies are actually improving the environment for them or not. As we engage the Chief Executive of Unilever Ghana, George Wiafe, and the case of this manufacturing giant and the challenges facing the industry, manufacturing sector, and what can be done to grow them. Mr. George Wiafe, I appreciate your time so much and welcome to PM Express Business Edition.
Thank you for having me, George.
One would ask that for you, how has been things and like for you? I mean, you came in quite interesting time, turned the business around, interesting numbers. For you at the personal level, how has it been for you looking at the transformation and the challenges?
I think at the personal level, I would say that it's been a time of great fulfillment for me. I'm a Ghanaian, as you know. I joined Unilever Ghana many years ago as a management trainee. Coming from the background I come from, I think this company and this country has been very great to me. And the opportunity to come back at the time I came to then be part of getting this great company to rediscover its greatness, I would simply say has been very satisfying to me to have had a chance to give value back to this company and return to the people of Ghana some of the investment that Ghana has made in me. I went to school on a Cocoa Marketing Board scholarship. And so I always believe I owe Ghana a lot. And Unilever being, as you put it, one of the giants of manufacturing in this country, having the chance to come back and help Unilever discover its greatness and be able to give employment back to young people my age when Unilever gave me employment is very fulfilling.
And for the record, you had an opportunity to also head other units of the group in other African and even the Asian markets as well. How was it like in the experience Ghana and having an opportunity to also head the markets in the Asia and the Africa and the other regions as well?
I think the first thing for me is it affirmed to me that we have capable people in Ghana. Because sometimes when you sit here and your orbit is Ghana, you sometimes are not too sure what your capability is matched against other parts of the world. So the opportunity, as you said, to have spent time working in Asia, in places like China and Singapore, and then in other markets in Africa, Nairobi, Kenya in East Africa, and also my beloved Nigeria. And having had the opportunity to be part of Unilever's global teams where you almost are having to ply your trade against the supposed best. You come back feeling, oh, indeed, we are capable in this place. And all we have to do is to be disciplined and do the things we know we have to do consistently. So that was the first experience. That was the first and I think the big experience for me, George. It also opened my eyes to where the world has gone to. And lots of time people talk about the Asian tigers, but when you've had the opportunity to live in Asia and you see the infrastructure and what Asia is doing for itself, I think important there is the lesson and testament that indeed it is possible for us to get it right here. Because sometimes there's hopelessness and there are people I meet who would say to me, George, are we going to be able to turn this around? And I say to people, when you read the history of Asia and you live and experience what Asia has done for itself in this short period of time, then you should have hope and believe that if we do the right things with the capability we have, we should get things right.
I want to take you out of the Unilever group and as a person, as George Wiafe, that did it give you any different perspective coming back into the country and also managing the unit here about what you've learned outside, the best practice in doing things outside, and how some will say that think global, act local?
Yes. In short, it gave me confidence and belief that, as I said again, if we do the right things, we should be fine.
Interesting times looking at your numbers in the past where the business was struggling. Now interesting numbers as you're seeing right now. Can I use the quote that Unilever Ghana has turned the corner? if I could use that expression.
You know, you've taken that out of my mouth. But I would first start, George, by honoring our great shareholders, because first and foremost, our shareholders have kept faith with us through, as you mentioned, the difficult times.
They didn't pull out.
They didn't pull out. They didn't. They were civil towards myself and the executive team, and whenever we met, in as much as we were not returning value to them in the ways they would have wished, they kept urging us on, encouraging us and believing in us. And that for me was very important. I would also like to celebrate the support we've had from our board chairman, Mr. Wiafe, and the non-executive members of the board and the entire board, spending time with us, helping us craft how we navigate the times that we came from. Okay, so I think that is very important, and that is not lost on me at all. I think at the end of the day, if you look at where we've come from, and I will start with the 3 financial measures. First is our profitability is much better. If we took 2019 as our base, we've improved our profitability by about 30 points. We are a publicly listed company, so it's out there for everybody to see. So in the last 3-4 years, we've improved profitability by about 30 basis points. That is for our P&L. Then you look at our balance sheet. And again, 2019 as base, the net between our current liabilities and our current assets was about 110 million Ghana cedis. We've narrowed it to about 30 million Ghana cedis. And I believe that everything going well, we should get in no time to a place where our balance sheet is where we want it to be. So great improvement in the balance sheet, not yet where we want it. Then is our cash. And from a position of negative cash, where we were dependent on overdrafts and borrowing from the bank, I'm very happy and proud to say that over the last 4 years, we've improved that consistently. And again, we're a publicly quoted company. From April this year, we've operated on free cash, and I've not had to depend on the on borrowing from the bank.
I asked the question about the tenor of the corner or whether things have stabilized, because we have seen the flip-flops before.
Yes.
And that's why I'm asking that now can we confidently say that things have turned around in terms of your earnings and the stability and all those things going forward?
Yes, I think, so if you ask me to summarize for you where I think we are, I think we've turned the corner.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
I think the proper tenant corner, yeah.
We've turned the corner. I think we've turned the corner. I think we've corrected many of the challenges we had, okay? In humility, though, I would say we've done a lot. There's still a lot more to do. This giant, great citizen of this country, Unilever Ghana PLC, is not yet where it would want to be for itself and in the service of the people of Ghana. So we are not going to be complacent at all. If you ask me to tell you in terms of steps where we are, we've stabilized the business. Now we've got to grow. And I think we've got to the place where we now have to grow to consolidate what we have done. So we've turned the corner, we've done a lot, but there's still a lot more to do going forward.
One critical thing or the concern for a lot of people when they look at the group, they look at the business, is that in terms of production, give me some education here. Are we still sourcing majority of our ingredients from Ghana here, or we've caught up in the challenge where we are just importing from other sister group and repackaging them and throw it onto the market?
Thanks for asking this, because I get asked this a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so numbers don't lie, George. We produce 70% of the volume we sell in this country in Ghana. And when I say in
these
Ghana...
These are not packaging. These are not knock down the goods, repackage them and throw it onto the market.
100%. Produced in this country. 70% of the volume we sell in this country, George, we make in this country, and we make at our Tema site. A place where every day we have about 900 Ghanaians through direct or indirect employment come to earn a living. They come, including myself, we sit there every day and we produce about 70% of what we sell in this market. Two, 75% of the raw materials we use for production, we source from this country, locally. Okay? So that is our footprint on the backside of manufacturing. 70% of raw materials sourced locally, 70% of what we sell on this market, volume-wise, produced locally. Employing about 900 Ghanaians working through our gates every morning, evening, afternoon, to earn employment. And as we do that, we trade through about 32 customers who together directly employ about 800 Ghanaians. We, on a weekly basis, are selling to about 50,000 stores and giving these little retailers the opportunity to be entrepreneurs and make a living for themselves and their families. And we do that giving business to about 22 suppliers in Ghana. So if you look at our footprint in terms of touching Ghana directly, this is what we do in this country. It's only 30% of the volume that we sell that we import. So we're still a very home-based Ghanaian company producing out of Ghana and selling in Ghana.
Tell me the trick here. Is it about the economies of scale or what? Because when you engage other manufacturing firms, they complain about, one, the struggle about being able to source their raw materials internally and the ingredients internally, but they are now faced with the challenge of having to bring in these knockdown items or ingredients and then repackage them and sell. What is your firm, what is Unilever doing differently? Is it about the interest that you have in other existing business that is doing the trick for you? Because the song or the mantra that I'm hearing for other manufacturing firms is that, listen, we are struggling to even source these things locally. It's expensive, the taxes issues, the cost of production, the human personnel. So it is cheaper to bring in these stuff from outside, knock them down, repackage them, and then throw it onto the market.
Okay. That's quite a big conversation, and I will try to break it down and give you my perspective. So for us as Unilever, our big raw material is palm oil. Okay? And we're very proud of our heritage, having been part of the effort to build a palm oil industry in Ghana. Many people don't know, but Benso oil palm plantation, 100% was started and developed by Unilever. Benso oil palm plantation today is in the mix of palm oil supply into this country. Not owned by Unilever, but part of the palm oil supply ecosystem in this country. Something that personally I'm very proud of as part of our heritage. Two is that through the management of one of the mills in this country, we then are able to source all our palm oil requirements. And I dare say in the last 4 years, we've not imported a drop of palm oil, a drop of stearin, or a drop of palm fatty acids for our production. That has helped us contribute to make not being a source of pressure on Forex in this country. Okay? And that is how 70% of our raw materials we source locally. So in many ways, we have benefited from investments our forefathers made in vertical integration that has created the oil industry in this country. Okay? Ghana at this point is still a net importer of palm oil, so there's still a lot of work to do to make sure that that becomes.
But you are not importing yours.
We are not importing because we have the opportunity to source locally. But back to your question about the struggle of other manufacturing firms, because we are also members of the Association of Ghana Industries. And I think in that area, there is a lot we have to do as a country. Okay? If you look at manufacturing as a percentage of our GDP today, it's about 8 to 10%, and we've stagnated in that zone. Think about China, you typically are talking 30 to 35%. You think of countries like America, through Malaysia, you typically will be talking about 20% plus or minus. So what you see in those places is manufacturing is a backbone of the economies, and it is manufacturing that is very widespread. It's a backbone of the economy. That is number one. Put that to the side for a minute and reflect on our sources of what we export in this country. I was reading the recent trade vulnerability report issued by the Ghana Statistical Service, and in spite of our aspiration to become a country that adds value and exports value-added products. And we have had many, many mantras for that. 80% of our exports still comes largely from three places.
China?
No, exports.
Oh, okay.
Gold, oil, cocoa, and cocoa paste. 80% of our exports. So we are still a very raw material, nature-based export country. How do we diversify? It's manufacturing. And that's why I mentioned China 35%, Ghana at 8 to 10%. Not surprising that about 16, 17% of our imports all come from China. Okay, so we've got to focus on manufacturing. How do we do that? And I would borrow from Dr. Otinjesi's recent lecture at the University of Ghana alumni celebration. We've got to identify areas where we have competitive and comparative advantage that we want to focus on, because we can't protect everything. And make sure we build the value chains. And when we say value chains here, real integrated value chains in a multidisciplinary way, making sure that for the areas we choose to focus on for industrialization and manufacturing, we understand the value chains, backward integration. We understand how, being a small country of about 35 million people, we are too small to have the scale. How do we very deliberately build external markets, be they through ECOWAS, the Africa Continental Free Trade Association, the EU, leverage on the United Kingdom now moving out of the European Union, Brexit. How do we very deliberately go out to build these markets so that we become an export-focused country, diversifying our exports from these traditional areas into manufacturing?
Are we coming more into the regulatory environment and all those things, and how it's impacting on the company going forward, and what needs to be done for industries in Ghana?
Yes.
But I also want to get from you, so in terms of the earnings, the financials, just to backtrack a little bit, what is the outlook in terms of going forward? You are a listed entity, but not into the numbers, but do you think that based on what you have recorded for the previous years, the outlook is indeed favorable?
We are a listed company, and so we can't make forward statements. Okay, but truth too is we are publicly, out of being a listed company, we publish our results quarterly. And I think our results in recent times are such that you don't have to be a magician to project, or a soothsayer, as you put it, to project. But if you ask me, I'll summarize it this way. We remain very positive about this country, and we are very positive about the future.
You're here for good.
When we are here for good.
This is PM Express Business Edition, as to look at manufacturing in Ghana today. What is being done to support the industry, the struggles they are going through, the case of Unilever, and is it indeed the giant of the industry? Now we're giving it the required support. This is PM Express Business Edition coming to you, not from Unilever in Tema or not in the Joy Studios, but from the plush Mövenpick Hotel here in Accra. That's where I'm engaging the Chief Executive of Unilever Ghana. My name is George Wiafe. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition, as we look at manufacturing firms in Ghana here today. What are some of the challenges they are facing? We've thrown the challenge to them that whether indeed they can produce to meet the demand of Ghanaians and even consumers in the country. And how are they managing in the face of all these struggles? Maybe an industry giant is able to weather the storms. But what are some of the challenges in the industry that indeed they talk about restrictions and all the rest, and whether they can produce to meet the capacity in Ghana here today? George also, and is the Chief Executive of Unilever Ghana. So, sir, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate it so much. Let's move into the environment, and the argument has been about counterfeiting, people, all sort of maneuverings in terms of competition in the market that is not helping local firms like you. How has it been for you easy, interesting, or challenging in meeting this competition? There are some who are saying that maybe local firms like yours just cannot stand up to competition, and this whole argument about counterfeiting, people using all sort of shrewd means to get onto the market, is neither here nor there.
All right. Thanks, George. So I'm a consumer, like many people.
You go into the market to buy.
I go onto the market
and you
to
buy
buy.
Unilever products, of course.
I do buy Unilever products.
But you also monitor competition.
For what Unilever products serve me for. But first and foremost, as a Ghanaian and working for Unilever, we believe in competition. Because competition is good. It brings out the best in us as businesses. And then it also makes sure that no one takes advantage of the consumer, and we serve the consumer well. And that the consumer gets value out of whatever they put on the table to pick up products. So competition is good from the point of being a consumer and from the point of a business. So that is fine. I think important for us as a country, though, is to make sure that we have set ourselves up for our local industries to be, for any competition to our local industries to be fair.
Is the ground not fair?
Any
so
competition
for a giant like yours.
Any competition to our local industries to be fair. And when I speak about fairness, I speak for manufacturing in Ghana. Okay? To be fair. That is number one for me. Number two, and if you recall my point about Ghana being a small market of 35 million people thereabouts, so out of this market, we are never going to have economy of scale. So what I will point out to you is our focus should not be about the manufacturing entities in this country producing and competing in Ghana. No. The focus should be that the regulatory environment, the tax environment should enable businesses, manufacturing businesses in this country to be able to serve Ghanaians competitively and also export. Because if we get the export markets, West Africa, for instance, is about 450 million people. If we are in that market because the manufacturing entities in this country are competitive, then we get the benefit of scale to be able to even serve Ghanaians better and also bring foreign exchange into this country. So the two things we have to think about is, being a small country, the export market becomes very important, and it's the regulatory environment and the tax environment enabling our businesses to attack the export market. Okay? So that we get the scale. And in doing that, as they say, charity begins at home. Are we also then able to serve locally? So when you come to the regulatory market, the regulatory area, first is, again, making sure that the ground is level and the rules that we have are applied. Many a time we've got everything on the books, is the application. Okay? Is the application. So making sure that everybody who is bringing whatever in is paying what they have to pay. Assuming that we have structured our tariff system in terms of what percentages have to be paid for raw materials, whatever, not to disadvantage local.
Do I get from you that the system is not level and it's been manipulated to disadvantage local manufacturing firms like yours?
I don't think it's been manipulated to necessarily disadvantage local manufacturers. What I would say is, we've not always been good at enforcing some of the rules and regulations we have in the tariff area. And it is important because it makes sure competition is fair. As you said in your intro, manufacturing gives employment to people. And it is important for us as a country, especially as we have this teeming young people on the streets, which could become a security issue in the long term, to give them employment. And to give them employment, we've got to get our manufacturing industries to work. To get our manufacturing industries to work, we've got to make sure that competition is fair, and the manufacturing industries, if they do their jobs well, should then perform. So making sure that whatever rules and regulations we have first and foremost been structured to enable the local businesses compete. And two, the rules are then administered and enforced. I think that's number one for me. Number two for me is around the area of taxation, making sure I look forward to the time when our economy allows us to lower taxation. Part of the problem we have is in some places, for some raw materials, by the time you clear and it's in your factory, you've paid taxes in excess of 40% of your CIF. When taxation is at that level, many people will try to dodge it, either because they don't have the cash flow to pay for the taxes ahead, because remember, most of these you pay ahead at the port, etc. So they will dodge it. So I look forward to our macroeconomic situation getting to a place where the managers of our economy can begin to bring some of these taxes down, so we have more people and companies complying, so that the few companies, and I say this with all pride, like Unilever, who have an avowed interest in making sure that in this market we would always abide by the rules around taxes, around quality of product, etc., are not shortchanged. Okay? I think, and lastly, would be how do we make sure that we have stitched the value chains such that local manufacturers can get raw materials. It should not be that if George Wiafe wanted to set up an industry, he has to find the resources to backward integrate, because then it becomes too much for one person to do. So most of our raw materials we import. Loss of almost every chemical would come from the soil. How do we sort out our land tenure system so that we can take people back to a Greek? We create the processing intermediary industries that create the raw materials for those areas we would have chosen as a country to focus on. Okay? So that we have the raw materials locally to feed our businesses who would have the local and the export markets to focus on and bring forex back to this country. And
I'll be coming into details about the tax issues, the levies, and even the regulatory environment. But back again to the counterfeit issue.
Yes.
How bad is it affecting Unilever? And just want to get that clarity from you first.
Specifically for Unilever, I'll be very honest, it's not my biggest headache.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not my biggest headache at this point. There is always a bit of counterfeiting. But I don't wake up worrying too much about that. I suspect lots of other industries worry about that. Then, because again, even though it's not the biggest issues for me, in all honesty, I think we have good collaboration with the relevant agencies. Okay? Be it the police, the GRA, etc. And when we have a need for their support, we get it. Then, as you talk about counterfeit, you probably also want to talk about grace. Okay? Now, grace would always be there because it's a free world. People are able to move stuff about. So first and foremost, again, is to make sure that the tariff system is right. And then if people are bringing in grace that contravene some of our own internal arrangements as Unilever, then we bring the GRA in. And I would say that in that area, the GRA and the enforcing agencies have been very helpful. So that will not be a big focus area for me. I suspect it must be big for other manufacturers, but not a big area
From your submission, do I get the understanding that you have been overtaxed? It's a big concern for you as well.
I wouldn't say we are being overtaxed. I think, again,
you have the breathing space.
George, I wouldn't say we are being overtaxed, because you've got to have relativity. And so what does overtaxed mean? You've got to have relativity. I would say that there is a lot of opportunity through taxation and the regulatory environment to help manufacturers in Ghana to be more competitive in the area of exports and to be more competitive in beating imports into this country. I asked this
in the relation to cost of production and the final pricing of the good, because then if the environment is favorable when it comes to taxation, it could impact on your cost of production. It is going to impact on the cost in pricing that final good, be it in the fast-moving consumer space industry as a giant in this space.
I come back to my point again. Because you can talk about taxation in abeyance, and then it doesn't mean too much. So I always talk about relativity. I'll give you an example. If you come to Unilever's factory in Tema today, we're probably doing something like 40%, 30, 40% utilization of our lines. So we could double the volumes we sell today.
What could help you double that volume?
Assuming we have that demand, I think we've got a lot of work to do ourselves in the area of building the equity of our brands, in the area of getting Ghanaians to understand the benefits and differentiation our brands give to them. For instance, if you went to the market, and let me use you as an example, and you got a bar of key soap, 800 gram at 17 Ghana cedis as we sell it today, and you saw a competitor product at 15 Ghana cedis, 800 gram. If you probably could afford either, chances are that you buy the 15.
But then one would ask that what is then making your good more expensive than the other one?
It's not
taxes?
It's not just about taxes.
Cost
it's
of
also
production?
no. It's about some of the benefit I give you. Okay, because we have vowed to make sure that we are giving for the consumer, for the kind of products we sell, the benefits they need to maintain their hygiene standards and keep them well. So when I make toothpaste for you, it's got to have fluoride, it's got to have zinc. Okay, those may not be mandatory by the rules here, but you need that for the care of cavities and the care of your teeth. So I've got to have that in it.
You think that every consumer appreciates
But
that? That's what the challenge is.
That's why I have to
appreciate that.
That's why I have to help you understand the benefits and the differentiation my brand gives you, and then you make that decision. So if you know that my toothpaste has zinc, and you know I help you understand what zinc does for your teeth, and you know that my toothpaste has fluoride, and you know what it does for your teeth, and you go onto the market, and I am at the right price, but probably at 120 grams, and then somebody doesn't have zinc and doesn't have fluoride at 100 grams, you make the decision what you want for yourself. So important for me first is to make sure that my quality takes care of what science has taught us are the basic needs of people as they use these products. I have to make sure that is clear to you, okay? And then number two is to make sure that my products are accessible to you. And accessibility, George, in our lingo simply means that if you, at all the price points, be it 5 Ghana cedis, 10 Ghana cedis, if you wanted a Unilever toothpaste, we have to get to a point where you can pick it. I may be 100 gram and somebody may be 120 gram, but then I teach you my benefits and then you decide what you want for yourself, okay? That is number one. So we've got work to do in that area. And I think many manufacturers in Ghana have work to do in that area. I think then is about how do we set up the tax and regulatory system that if these companies have done their part, they can compete with everyone in this market fairly. And I keep adding and also export. Because I think manufacturing is a scale game. 35 million people, if all our focus is serving the 35 million people and we structure just around that, manufacturing entities in this country are never going to be competitive. How do you, from out of a market of 35 million people, hope to compete against the Indias and Chinas of this world with populations in excess of 1 billion? Okay, so how do we, not just around taxation, but around market access, make sure that the industries and entities in this country can export, bring foreign exchange in, get the benefit of scale, and lower their cost of production? We can't do that for all industries. And I say as reference, having lived in Singapore, George, and what you see in that, we've got to make choices. Targeted. Where do we think we have the competitive and comparative advantage? For instance, why do we still export cocoa beans? For instance, why do we still export gold from the ground? And in these areas, with the natural endowment we have, is there the opportunity to expand, understand the value chains, and make sure that we've created circular economies around these value chains, and we benefit from, we exploit the full financial benefit from these places. We've talked about bauxite. Now I hear about lithium and the e-car industry, the environmentally friendly kind. How are we going to set shop to make sure that we're getting the full benefits of the entirety of the value chains of some of these things we have? I think that for me is the bigger conversation, because the tax thing in my mind is very it's much easier.
I get from you that as a big firm, you
Yes.
know, economies of scale and all the rest. So you've been able to deal with the cost of production issue and all the rest. So
Yes.
it is not a challenge for you right now, which could then dovetail in the pricing of your product, i.e. quality being associated and all the rest. Do I get that now Unilever has moved to that stage
No.
where
No.
cost of production is not
No.
a major challenge for you?
No.
Or it's still a challenge for you?
It is a challenge for me. It is a challenge for me. But what I don't want us to do, because I think we've got to think a big far out.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got to think a big far out. And that is why I keep talking about value chains.
Yeah.
And I talk about scale.
Yeah.
Because being a country as small as we are, and with some of the challenges we have, in the immediate term, there's so much we can do about taxation. But get the markets, we need to get the market sorted and integrate ourselves into the wider market so we get scale is number one for me. Then we need to then look at taxation and make sure that we are taxing industries in this country such that they can compete. But I've already told you my asset utilization is about 35 to 40%. So I'm still sitting on about, and typically coming from a supply chain background, your asset utilization should be about 80%. So even with a little potential production I have here, I'm not fully utilized. Okay, but the demand for the products I make in this country is more than twice what I produce. Okay, and I see all kinds of imported products on the market. So indeed, if my cost of production could be lower, I would sell more. So I have a cost of production.
So it is a challenge.
I have a
Taxation is also a challenge.
It
as
is a
well.
challenge.
But you think that we shouldn't focus on it too much because then we lose the bigger picture.
I think it is one of the things we need to press. But if
for
you
the
ask
regulatory environment to deal with.
Exactly. Okay. But I think if you ask me for businesses in this country to do well and do well for the benefit of our
Including
country,
Unilever.
including Unilever, making sure we have access to more markets. It's important because we're a small country.
We take a second look at this taxation
And
issue. to deal with
then
the cost of
taxation should come in to support. But taxation alone, George, will not do the trick because manufacturing many a time is about scale. Okay?
Recently, some other members, and I can't vouch for Unilever and all the rest, when the inflation skyrocketed and all the rest, they made some adjustments in their prices.
Yes.
We've seen inflation trend down.
Yes.
Can I put it to Unilever that when are we going to see Unilever react in terms of pricing, if indeed you also join your other members to review prices because of the skyrocketing inflation from over 50-something to 30-something now? Are you going to see Unilever respond accordingly so that we, the consumers of yours, will benefit?
All right. So first, I always like to start by saying I am a consumer.
Okay.
So even though I work as the
They don't
managing
load
director
basket or stamp you to your
manage-
office that listen, give us your shopping list.
No.
We'll bring it to
No,
you.
no.
Okay.
If I did that, I
Okay.
would not be sitting with you.
Okay.
Because our rules around integrity, etc., are very firm. And so, so I'm a consumer.
Yeah.
And I think for myself and the public in general, I have a lot of empathy for the strain we are all going through. You know, cost of goods and services has gone up, and remunerations and salaries have not gone up in the same step, you know, for many reasons. We've had COVID, we've got global material inflation, etc., hitting us, and so we've got that problem. So that I get, that we need to sort that out. That is number one. Inflation in this country has been north of 40%. Actually went as far as to 54%, if I remember correctly.
You're correct, yeah.
And has been north of 40% for 1 year. That has been serious. Remember, global material prices have also gone up. Settled now with a relative settling of the cedi, around about 12 Ghana cedis to $1, but have still remained very high. What many people have forgotten is that pre-COVID, a container, 20-footer container or 40-footer container coming out of China or Europe, you typically for a 20-footer container will be paying something like $2,000, $2,500 dollars for freight. Now it went all the way to about 10. It's come down low, but it's still at about 6,000 to 7,000. So we're still not back to the pre-COVID days. And so unfortunately, even though inflation is coming down and prices of raw materials have stabilized, they've stabilized at a very high, and that is impacting our people. What have we done was your question. I thought to give you a bit of background. So I would say to you that we have taken price reductions on our products. Okay, so and
it has already happened.
Yes, you can check that. We have reduced.
When from when? So if I go into the market right now, you have reduced your prices in relation to the reduction in inflation.
Yes, we've reduced the price of key soap. We've reduced the price of Pepsodent, and we have reduced the price of Geisha. These are our three big brands. We have reduced prices.
When did this thing happen? I stand to not specific dates, but I'm looking at periods.
So we reduced the price of key soap, I believe, about 2-3 months ago. I will need to check the exact dates. We reduced the price of Pepsodent much earlier. Okay, and I forgot to add, we've also reduced the price of Guardian Carbolic, which I think we did about 4 or 5 months ago. But we have reduced prices, and then also we've not taken on any new price reductions. Because remember, we are in competition. Remember, we need volumes to get the economies of scale, to then be able to serve people more. So it's something we watch all the time.
So if I get from you that, or can I put it to you as a question, that if this trend should continue in terms of the cost of inputs stabilizing or going down, we will see that correspondent reduction in these prices.
Absolutely.
Or just like some other industries who would want to benefit and shift the goalposts, and when these things happen, we still don't see that reduction in prices on the market.
Absolutely. Absolutely, George. And I think when I travel around the country as I do market visits and consumer immersions, don't take the knowledge and connectedness of the Ghanaian for granted. And if we don't respond and open ourselves up to being hit by fair competition because we try to be greedy, Ghanaians will shift away from us. And we would be the losers. Remember, I have told you at the beginning, that volume is very important for manufacturing. And so if you get too gung-ho about unit profitability, and you don't make sure that first and foremost you are accessible to the consumer and the consumer sees value in your offering, the consumer would move. My competition is not only imported competition. My competition is also local. And remember, we are a company that amongst our values have integrity and responsibility as one of them. So we are a big respecter of the antitrust rules in this country. And so are not in cahoot with anyone trying to manage prices. And so the competition out there is fierce.
There's
and
no
if
cartel.
I don't respond,
there's no cartel among the giants in the industry in fixing prices and all the rest. You don't do that.
If there was any sense of that, I would not be sitting here with you. I work for a company, Unilever, and I'm very proud of this, George. We're big on integrity, and every day I'm told and reminded of that. We're big on responsibility as a value. We are big on pioneering, and we are big on respect. These are our 4 values, and these values we've also enshrined in what we call our Code of Business Practices. And so, and our Code of Business Practices is how we do business with the external world, and we also work with each other. So for us, it is a no-no.
This is PM Express Business Edition, coming to you from the Mervyn Peak Hotel here in Accra, where we are engaging the Chief Executive of Unilever Ghana, focusing on the manufacturing sector and industries. When we come back, the big question, can they produce to meet local demand? And attempts to restrict imports, would it benefit Unilever, or it would not benefit a giant in the industry like this? We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition, as we look at the manufacturing sector in Ghana, as we focus more on a giant in the industry. We've heard the arguments about other industries, the challenges they are facing. And what about the argument about the ability to produce to meet demand on the market? And even government quest to try and restrict some items because of what they have to do to protect them. And the big question out there is about whether they also have the capacity to meet this demand. Jibu Zagadiwa in Liver Ghana, George Wiafe, thank you so much for your time as well. As I pick your thought on inflation, FX, depreciation of the cedi, how challenging has it been for you in your quest to cut down production as consumers, as ours, are also pushing for price reduction?
So, George, let me rephrase your question, okay? And I hope I answer what you're asking of me. If you asked me, George, we're both Georges, so let me be careful now. George Unilever,
okay,
what do I wake up thinking about every day? Biggest challenge to me today is the high inflation.
Okay.
Is the high inflation.
It's not the city.
It's the high inflation because it culminates in high inflation because remember we are very import driven as a country, so high inflation. And for the consumer base I serve, high inflation suffocates them.
Okay.
And I look forward to the work being done by the Bank of Ghana and the managers of our economy going on to continue to reduce inflation. We were at 54% at a point. We've come to about 34, 35% now. Yeah. That journey has to
Projection
continue.
15% next
15%
year, end of
next year.
29 end of year.
That has to happen. And I trust that we get that very quickly because it is very suffocating. Because as that has gone on, small manufacturing bases as we are, we have lost volume. And my last reading of the performance of industries in Ghana in 2022, and I think I read that report just this week, is that in foods, nutrition, generally consumption volume-wise has reduced by 8%. In home and personal care, it's reduced by about 13% across the country. So that is worrying. It's worrying because if people are consuming less, then it means industry has less volume to play with. And then you have this effect of, I've already told you, manufacturing is about volume. So you have people who are stretched and are looking for prices to go down, but you're losing volume, and as you lose volume, your production leverage goes down, and you can't give them lower prices. I don't know if I make myself clear.
I get
exactly. So it has this effect, and so we've got to arrest that, and that is why inflation is very important. Then would also be, we've discussed this extensively, but it is making the ground even for everyone. Okay, would be the third for me, and the second for me. Sorry, and I think a lot of work has been done. All the things the managers of the economy are doing, I wish them all the best of luck, and I wish us as a country good luck, because it has to come to fruition very quickly, because we need to remove this uncertainty about the economy of Ghana, so that people who are minded to invest in this country can do that with an open mind, because there's a lot that goes for us as a country, and sometimes when you're out there, the warmth towards Ghana can sometimes get you wondering. So how do we make sure that the uncertainty we have around the economy now, the work being done by the managers of the economy, take that away very quickly, so that the investing population, the investing crowd would come back into Ghana. And for instance, for somebody like me, when I talk to my HQ about what we could do here, people get it. Okay, so those will be the three things that are in the short term are important. I think in the long term, we've talked about value chains, we've talked about creating a raw material economy that can feed industries, and then we've talked about deliberately opening up the external market on the back of things like the Africa Continental Free Trade, ECOWAS, the European Union, and
so I get from you that for you, inflation is your biggest hurdle.
That
gives you sleepless night because of the impact on your volumes, operations, and even the pricing of your final good. Let's come to the biggest issue now. Some will say import restrictions. Some will say that maybe industries like yours quite excited because, listen, it gives you the market for you to flood it with Unilever goods. What do you make of this move by government to try and restrict some imports? Because in liver, I don't know, there might be oil in. Is that a good news for you?
Okay, so I will tell you, George, what I expect at the end of all the deliberations, because I know the Honorable Minister for Trade has working with on the
Done some
government side,
engagement, gone
has
back,
some
rejigged
ally
the things, and
that
then-
has gone to Parliament, correct? All that debates going on. I think at the end of the day, we need to come to a place where that ally, whatever we finally sign on to, represents the choices we have made. It should not be ad hoc. It should represent the choices we have made. Choices we have made in the areas of where we want to add value. Choices we have made in the areas where we think we have competitive and comparative advantage, and we want to use this ally as an instrument to encourage investment into. Okay? And in the short and long term, the choices we have made to move our economy forward. In the final construct, that is what I expected to achieve. Coming to whether I could produce more.
Yeah.
I've already said my
yeah.
utilization is
Yeah.
35 to 40%. So for what I do, I could double my production overnight. I believe many other industries in this country could do that. But as a Ghanaian, and I like to say this all the time,
Yeah.
what we create at the end of the day should serve the Ghanaian people and not shortchange them in the area of availability and cost of goods and services. So it should address the long-term needs of our people, and we should structure it such that as we journey to that, achieving that long-term goal, the average Ghanaian is also not put under pressure in terms of availability of goods and services and the pricing of goods and services.
I think that I get from
and I
you
think
that
we can do
as
all
long as
that together.
I think that I get from you that you would prefer more engagement, because in the broader picture, this is a good policy. Maybe more industry engagement would help so that it is well structured before the final implementation takes off.
I think engagement is always helpful.
Yeah, but that is what you want, because I get from you there's also the concern that, listen, if it's not implement this in well, there could be the impact of availability of goods and the pricing as well.
Yes.
And that is what I get from
Yes.
you.
So at the end of the day, we've got to get to a place where there's ownership. There's ownership by the average Ghanaian. There's ownership by industry. There's ownership by government. And the responsibilities of all of us are very
And
clear.
that is dealt with in the space of engagement.
Engagement,
You
yes.
get the fear that if it's not implemented or it's not done well, then you raise the concern about the availability of goods and then the pricing, which is a fear
Yes.
that I get from you expressing.
Yes, yes, yes. Just imagine a situation where, depending on how we implement it, if we have not understood where we can make more locally, if we've not understood the value chains that would support whatever choices we make, and are beginning to expand those value chains and getting them ready to work to support this. If suddenly, and I'm creating a scenario just for the sake of argument, that suddenly we have shortages, the average Ghanaian is going to say this thing doesn't work. And then it suffers stillbirth. So at the end of the day, what we do, whatever comes out of this, should serve the Ghanaian. It should serve the Ghanaian in the short term. And if the Ghanaian has to make any short-term sacrifices, it should be clear to them what those sacrifices would achieve in future for all of us. Be it the creation of of the right value chain. So I think that engagement and education has to go on, and we've got to face it such that we walk. There's seamless transition to wherever we want to get to, because it is already tough for people. It's tough for all of us for the reasons we've already talked about: global inflation, COVID, and the many other things. And so we've got to manage it well. But if you ask me, is there a need for an intervention like being discussed now that creates the space for manufacturing in Ghana to blossom? Yes.
The broader policy is good. But some will say that, and not just you alone, I've engaged other manufacturing firms who have expressed these concerns. Don't you think that then it's an indictment on firms like Unilever and other giants, because then these restrictions is supposed to give the opportunity to industries like yours to meet that space and challenge and shortfall.
Yes.
Or maybe you need more time, because then some say that, can't you guys meet the space? And if there are fears of availability of goods and pricing, then it's an indictment.
That is where I think, so I've said to you, I'm sitting on about 60% capacity utilization. I can double my capacity overnight.
So go ahead and double it, some will say.
If the demand is there, I can double my capacity overnight. In some other I believe many manufacturing concerns can do same.
Yeah.
Okay? So I think that is where the consultation and the dialogue comes. In which areas do we protect for the long-term future? And are those areas immediately able to meet whatever demand we forecast will come through this LI? That is number one. We've got to get that right for the people of Ghana. Number two is where in industries or categories where we don't have the capacity ready press button like I have, what is the lead time? Now, depending on the different industries, George, be it capital, production lines, etc., your lead time could be anything in the region of 6 months to 1 year, so that we face some of the categories and get by the time where needed. Those who can start immediately and is in the long-term interest of the choices we've made, boom, let that happen. Those who need a bit of time to prepare and be ready, set that up, and so that we have a schedule. Because at the end of the day, we have to carry the Ghanaian with us. And we carry the Ghanaian with us when the Ghanaian is not put through too much short-term strain and can also see the long-term benefit of this. So it's one of the times we've got to get right. And if we get it right, then we are on to a good thing. Because you know what will happen? And go back to our history again. We've done many things in this country. And if you are a student of Ghana's economic history, you would see that you always have to trust that the human being is innovative. And if you put across policies that do not take care of people and their needs, people will find ways around it. Okay? So when you have a situation where you don't have enough forex and you introduce what we used to call then where you went to the Ministry of Trade and you were given import license. Yeah. You introduce Kalabule. Yeah. Our history has that. Okay? So if you create uncertainty, if you create a dysfunctional setup, people will find ways around it, because people are not going to stay in their rooms and die. Okay? People will find ways around it. Our history has shown, for instance, that as we liberalized our exchange rates, which was, so you've got to be real. As we liberalized our exchange rates, the black market for forex it's gone down. So at the end of the day, George, I think the lesson for all of us is always to make sure that policy and whatever we do is serving the people. First, as we design policy to achieve whatever aim, we carry the people with us, the stakeholders with us, and it serves them and they can see the end result. If we don't do that, people will find ways to live their lives, and sometimes the ways they find to live their lives undermine the policy, and then the policy doesn't succeed.
As we try and wrap up on this discussion, I also wanted to find out from you, how has the environment that has impacted on purchasing power of consumers impacted on the love for your goods?
Love is a big word.
Yeah. Or demand for your goods. Let me speak in the economic space.
But I think love is also a word we use in business. Okay, so we say consumer love and we say brand love. So I think, and love is deep. Okay, so the love for my brands, which for us in business we call equity, is still very strong. It's very strong, and that is why we still are able to do what we have done. You've initially talked about our results and our financials. So the love is still there. And to quote what it's a slang in Ghana, the love is deep for our brands. I think what it has done to us, though, is around affordability. So if you love the brand but you can't afford the brand, what do you do? And I've already told you that in our industry, which is home and personal care, we've lost about 12, 13% of volume.
And that is dependent on the purchasing power of these consumers.
Exactly.
And that the environment, the economy has impacted on
exactly.
them.
So while some may have shifted to less expensive brands, even if it's not giving them all the benefits that they require, in totality, people are consuming less, and that is worrying.
And because of the environment.
Exactly.
They're impacting on their purchasing power.
Because of the loss in purchasing power.
As you ramp up, outlook for the industry, outlook for Unilever going forward, going into next year?
I'm always an optimist. I'm always an optimist.
The economy as well?
I'm always an optimist.
You expect the best?
I am always an optimist.
Those ones that I appreciate your time so much, and I'll be looking forward to engaging you again as we fully turn the corner. And when the numbers also are doing so well, solid dividend payments, and also looking forward to more price reductions. This has been PM Express Business Edition, engaging the Chief Executive of Unilever Ghana, the Plush, Mervyn Pick Hotel here in Accra, or in our studios, or even at the offices of Unilever, but here at the hotel. We look forward to engaging more on these interesting developments in the sector. This has been PM Express Business Edition, and I know the debate will go on in your homes and your offices about whether a lot more can be done to support manufacturing firms here in Ghana. My name is George Wiafe. Have a great day.